Good.
Yes, we do. I think that Peter said that he was going to dial in, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because his back is following.
Good. Okay, call the meeting to order. I think that's what this is for.
It's Joe.
First item on the agenda, hello, everyone. First item on the agenda are the minutes from May 19. And I have a couple of questions, not about the minutes, but about open items. But let's first take the minutes. Is everyone okay with the minutes as drafted?
Yes.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make the motion?
Second from Greg. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
All right.
Ayes have it. Two issues in the minutes that I just wanted to understand better. We discussed at length the conserve water message at the last meeting, given the well levels and so forth. How did that actually get publicized? Does anyone know?
Yeah, so not without a lot of,
Yes.
jiggling. But in the end, I think fair, because I think it's a little bit of a learning process, I guess. And as part of that, I think we should be devoting more time to what are going to be the most effective communication channels, assuming that there are going to be future communications and we want that to be part of the town, us, what have you. I used and took the liberty of emailing all of the presidents of the associations that we knew of. The town had a list. I would say maybe a third of them acknowledged it directly to me and indicated that they were sending it out. The rest, I'm not sure what they chose to do. And I didn't try to, pester them or what have you, because we were taking a little bit of a liberty to just use that channel. Jessica and colleagues used the Notify Me town channel, and I think it was either community interest, community event, something in that kind of more general category, that they said people have to sign up for that box, and it was probably a few hundred people. They indicated that channel was added after the original Notify Me was created. And so if you signed up when it was first created, you might not know that it's there. So, that's another part of the whole thing of, how do we kind of refresh or create a separate category or, something of the sort. That's about it. And so one of the things that I'd like to do is, ping the Shelter Island Association, which is more central. And they said that at their next meeting, they were going to bring it up and just seek feedback, one, for how many people were like, yeah, we got it, but we're not going to send it to our members, or that they were, supportive and just didn't acknowledge it, and or are they open to using that channel in the future? Because I think it's an effective channel. Those presidents can choose to do what they want, but if they're open to say, hey, if you guys have something important to communicate and you want to communicate it to us, feel free. That would be the ideal, and then, go from there. The Notify Me, I think we need to keep kind of thinking and working. I don't know that on it a little bit. I know that the town said they posted it on their website. A couple of people said to me, well, where? It was posted as a news item, so it's just, disappears. It's not a banner on their front page. And maybe that's okay right now, but I think these are all things that I think, at least from my perspective, the town board and committees should be thinking about. How are we more effectively communicating, and what are these channels, and when is there something important that, yeah, let's create a banner right on the front page of the town, website. And then lastly, sorry, I don't mean to go on too long.
Oh.
We had asked about using the electric signs.
Right.
And I don't know if one of the town board members knows the process, but I guess the feedback we got is it's kind of signed up for and, allocated into July or something of the sort. And so I don't know what that process is, whether it's because they're using it for specific traffic things that they've scheduled as, or what have you, but it's such a good mechanism that I don't know where they're, again, as part of a communication process is, can we jump the line because there's something the town really wants to get out there? And then who makes that decision? Is it the town board telling the police department or what have you? So these are all things I think we need to think about and, kind of clarify.
It's the first I'm hearing it, so you
Yeah.
never reached out to anyone.
So I don't, I haven't seen them out. To be honest with you, I don't know. It might just be in the wrong part of town. So I don't know what they were used for, but we kind of got to know. And I was a little surprised because it seemed like, well, unless it's a lot of traffic stuff that you're committed to, if it's other just ancillary items, you would think, let's figure out a way to do this. But the structure, we haven't gone through that process of communicating and creating a structure that everybody's comfortable with. So are you familiar, Amber, with what, so I don't know.
Yeah, you just email Chief. That's
Yeah, I
all.
was gonna say, yeah, PG.
That's all you need to do. Email Jerry and Charlie.
Well, I think somebody called him and he said it was, at least as far as I know, and said it's signed up. So he wasn't saying like, ooh, this is a priority or what have you. But so, I mean, we can have that conversation with him. I can ask him like, what is the process? And is there does a street fair or something take priority over this? What is the protocol? Is it, kind of.
So I suggest, this is really, I suggest actually that we ask our town board liaison
to do that?
to come back to us with how the priority works in terms of getting on that sign. Because if we have something that is high priority in terms of public import,
Yep.
we shouldn't just fall in line with everything else just because there happens to be a line.
Yep.
Unless that is the process. But can we ask you to, okay, so
And
Gordon,
just to reiterate, I think it's broader. I mean, maybe it is, if there's a hurricane coming, of course, they're going to put them out, like, kind of thing, but they're like, I don't know that the town has really thought about how do we effectively communicate
To be honest with you,
beyond the danger level where, you're comfortable just sending something out to everybody. There are like stages of things that
Good point, I should know, I should know.
it's a quirky thing, I'm sure.
okay, so you're going to advise us on how the priorities are set? I'm not saying that we should always be first. I'm just saying that I would expect there's some process, somebody's out there deciding priorities. So Gordon will get back to us on that.
And I will reach out to the Shelter Island Association and just ask, are they able to garner any feedback from the other groups of receptiveness and effectiveness of that as a
Okay.
communication channel?
So Sean, the Shelter Island Association is meeting this evening at 5 o'clock at the North Ferry offices. I will not be physically present. I'll attend remotely, but there's only an audio channel. There isn't a video channel, so it's sometimes hard to get a word in edgewise. So, but Stella is on this call.
Yes, and that's how I heard about it. I heard about it through Stella as a homeowner in the Heights,
Okay,
and
yeah, so I
it
mean,
was fine. It was great.
Stella's great, so she's
Yeah.
incredibly responsive, and there are a few that, were immediately responsive. I just don't know what the others did, so.
Right. Okay. So, second follow-up on the minutes was my takeaway on the interim town attorney's discussion of governance. Here's what I got out of it. One, no more than two members can talk about business other than in a noticed meeting. Two, public participation. It's up to us to decide the terms of public participation. And I would like to make a suggestion on public participation, that if we're going to have public comment, that each individual be limited to 3 minutes. The reason I want to set it now is that I don't want to try and set it when somebody's talking at 5 minutes and is headed to 8 minutes and to try to shut the person down. I'd just like to have a rule. Okay, here, it's 3 minutes. I'll keep the time. And the only time that you'll ever see me use the gavel is when we hit the 3 minutes. Okay? On conflicts, it has to be a specific and a private interest. That's the bad news. The good news is recusal is the remedy. So if you have a conflict, it's up to you to disclose it. You just recuse yourself. And then the very good news is that the Town Ethics Board is available to all of us on a confidential basis if we need guidance. So they're there, use them, okay? Those are the only comments I had on the minutes. Everybody okay? First, next item of business is confirming responsibility for the open items. I sent a note to everyone after the last meeting that had a table in it, and that table is actually attached to your papers for this meeting, that laid out all the various different topics that are carrying over from the prior membership and who's doing what with those topics. And I just wanted to tick through this and make sure that everybody's okay with this. And you don't have to be okay with it. You can make suggestions to it. But this is what I took out of the last discussion. So can we go through this in order now? A is the precipitation tracking. I've got Greg as the owner of this, along with the well status reporting. That's basically two people's work that was done. It was Ken and you before, asking you to pick up both sides of that. Are you okay with that? Do you want to share that with somebody?
Well, to be clear,
Yeah.
Ken had passed the precipitation gauge to me, and
Okay.
given my schedule of lack of consistency, Peter took it on. I assume he's been doing it. I wrote out a very short 8-step, most of it, kind of process
Okay.
that I am sure he's following. And then I think typically he would just communicate that to Greg, and then Greg encompasses into his full thing.
I'm fine with that. My issue here as chairman is making sure it's
Peter
clear.
has some in it.
So I have mounted the precipitation gauge here on my property. So we're recording precipitation. I'm putting it into the spreadsheet that Ken was using. So it's being recorded. We have totals month to date, month up year to date, and each month. So that's it's a happening thing.
But one thing is that we can take a look at this. This is on a Weather Underground. And it's private people's systems. They post it. And I've handed out, this is 4 different items, 4 different sites, the Shorewood site, Brown Dog, Peppermill, and Shelter Island Heights. And I think that you need, if we want to use this either as a parallel, or maybe this can usurp and be more effective because it's right online, or would be when I make them my change when I do the evaluations for the water level in the aquifer. I think that this would be a good thing, I think, for us to just even, that way you don't have to worry about somebody's on vacation, it's a heavy rainstorm, they're gonna go out. And we could conceivably take a look at getting a system that would work on Weather Underground. And that way we would own the information, as it were. We'd have to figure out where we're gonna put it. There used to be one at the school. It's not, as far as I know, it's not functioning right now, but there's some opportunities here to get it where it's not somebody saying, well, Jed, I didn't get anything this weekend because you know, we were out of town, whatever.
So these are homeowners who have gauges,
That is correct.
who somehow log the data in.
That they don't, I don't believe that they log it in. That's
think
an
it's
automatic.
It's automatic.
Yeah, it's an automatic.
It's a hands-off process. You know?
Machine process.
Oh, so they don't actually physically read it.
No need, no, it's an electronic, as I understand it anyway, it's electronic.
Yeah, specific
okay.
time.
Be nice if you could get it in a open sync, because we don't know what the.
I'm sorry.
We don't know what the physical location, like if you put it in my backyard, I have trees. And it might, you know, it'd be nice if like at the school or out here where it's,
Yeah.
obviously, unfettered with trees and everything else.
So Peter, what's your reaction to this?
Well, it seems like for the until we are absolutely clear that we don't need it, I have the same rain gauge that Ken was using. It's not under any trees. It's mounted every day, just in the morning. And I live here, and so I'm rarely away. And even if you are away, it may overflow, but it catches what it overflows. And Sean and I kind of went over how you can measure what the overflow is, which is just refill the gauge again and again until you've emptied out the overflow. So I'm continuing to maintain that spreadsheet. So we'll have the continuous numbers that Ken's been working from. It's a sanity check, also different amounts of rainfall in different parts of the island. So the numbers from around Shelter Island will be maintained. It's really no burden on me. And just
Okay.
And I can backstop you because I have the same gauge, but I'm not.
yeah, with 2 locations. So that's what we.
I don't do it every day, but once a month, I will have a monthly total, so.
I think the thing to do is to do a test on this. I'll do the next, we've got 2 months now.
Right?
If we get the data there, where the column that says rainfall this month, we'll switch that out and get the information from Peter and maybe from Dave, and just see how do these things all align with each other.
And just to be to put the information in front of us, we had in May a very, very good month of 8.86 inches. Through June so far, 2.52. We're up to 20.1.83 inches, partly from Ken's measurements, partly from my measurements. But as Dave had pointed out that rainfall in the spring doesn't quite compensate for a lack of rainfall in the winter. Rainfall in the winter will make it down to the aquifer. Rainfall in the spring is entirely taken up by the growing plants, so it really never does make it down to the aquifer. And we had very poor levels of rain January, February, and March, and April.
Okay, so to close this out, Peter's going to continue to use Ken's rain gauge and report that. And then on a trial basis going forward, you're going to present this data.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll do a correlation between them, see how it works.
Okay. All right. Let's see, the drought policy guidance document. I may have lost the string on this in terms of the emails and so forth, but this was getting revised or checked. Where does it stand? And who owns it?
I know Greg had shared the latest version with me. I only had a couple of comments, and I think I would think we're probably due to go through it, whether it's the next meeting or not, like as a group, and decide whether it's, ready for finalizing.
Okay, so let's put that as an action item at the next meeting. And can you guys circulate your draft ahead of time, and then we'll.
And Greg, I don't know if you remember what my comment was, but just for the sake of it, I think the main thing that I didn't see was the local collection as part of, like you had a lot of other things, but we didn't put in the local collection aspect of it, which hopefully will never be the case, but it's, I guess I envisioned, because I've heard it before, where we're like, gee, we got a lot of rain, you know, or no, we didn't get a lot of rain, but the aquifer seems fine. So like, it's going to react at some point, right? And so like, you know, that's another local data point where you might say, we know it's coming, we just haven't seen it yet, we might as well get ahead of it, you know, kind of thing. So,
It's happened again, but we'll get back to that.
Okay. All right, so that's the follow-up on that. The WAC community events. This document says that Peter was to send us a schedule of events and suggested topics for 2025.
Right. And yeah, I'm happy to continue to own events. All we have at the moment is Sean did an excellent job, and we had circulated a discussion about. He created a document that could be a starting point for a Shoulder Island Water 101 event session. Time to be determined. We also have the July 17th Perfect Earth event at the Presbyterian Church. We have a couple of documents, a poster, a flyer for that, and it is being in cooperation with it's being hosted by us and the Green Committee, or presented that way. It's very well organized at this point. Doug has continued on with his role. Sean and I have both been attending. It's only two of us, so it's not a problem in terms of the open meetings law. And again, there are two documents that we may want to review at some point, because it would be nice for us to be helping in the publicizing of that event. Beyond that, we have the Green Expo to pay attention to. And we don't yet have any further events particularly scheduled for this season.
Okay.
and just, I recently just had Tim drop off to me 100 brochures of the irrigation, 100 brochures of the fertilizer, and I'm separately printing out 100 copies of the Suffolk County water test form, so that at all of these upcoming events, hopefully we can have all three of those, you know, out and around and trying to make them more
And
accessible.
indeed, we're expected to be present at a table, which I'm happy to person. And maybe I'm sure Sean would like to do that too. So we will have our presence as a committee at that event at the Presbyterian Church on the 17th, and as will the Green Committee, as will a number of other sustainable landscaping organizations on Shoulder Island, on the East End and Shoulder Island.
Okay.
A Beach is having a cocktail party, so it'd be a good opportunity to have a few copies of that available.
Yeah, just tell me when, because I can drop it off too. Yeah,
It's 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I'll just,
Okay, just to let me know and I can drop them off for.
anyway, but other homeowners.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna do it. I did it not only for this, but then Silver Beach is also having a cocktail reception, and so it's, you know, it's a good
place.
You know, places to just drop them. And I like the printing out of the Suffolk County water test form, because, you know, when you have a physical thing and you take it home and put it on your desk, you're more likely to
Do it.
Yeah.
Okay, Peter,
Yes.
can you set up kind of a running schedule of these events, just to kind of keep track, to keep reminding us of what's coming?
Mhm.
So we can put it,
Well, I can, although again, we collectively will need to decide on a date for, if we're going to indeed do it, a date for a Shoulder Island Water 101, you know, the basics, so that people understand how their water works, event, both a venue and, you know, again, I'm not necessarily, so just as a committee, we have to decide. And typically what we had done in the past was Thursdays at 5 o'clock. We had done that under the tent at the library. So we may want to pick a Thursday for one more event, perhaps in early August, to go kind of in between the July Presbyterian Church, Earth Cares event, and the Green Expo.
Okay, it'd be helpful for, if at the next meeting, there's an agenda item where you just present that calendar, even if it's got some blanks in it, in terms of topics or dates or locations or whatever. If you present that, it'll force us, okay, it'll be a good reminder to force us to make some decisions so that those events actually happen.
Right. And what is the date of our next meeting? If anybody's able to pick that up real quickly, or I could.
July 21.
July 21. Okay, so that will be after the July 17th event.
Right.
So it focuses in on Shelter Island 101. And the July 17th event is well in hand because it already has
Yes.
promotional materials and it's ready to, it's well organized at this point. So.
And so I had circulated that narrative, if you will, on Water 101, which I had started originally to try to use as a Silver Beach thing, being on the board of Silver Beach. But I did think that it has a broader application of really very simple things that most people don't know about water. It sounded like there was reception for that, so I can kind of move that forward and try to professionalize it a little bit, because all it was just a bunch of sentences in a flow that seemed to make logic. I will circulate that back out, because before doing that, I'd love if somebody says, you're missing this, like out of the very core basics, how about including this? And then I can try to refine it. I'm not really a great PowerPoint person, but I can certainly work on making it nicer. And then I think that's a decision point of what is the right venue to use it.
That's what I'm going to say.
I think that the tent stuff is always good. Again, I think I've said this a lot. You get a lot of the same people that are interested. I thought of it more of like if SIA and Stella and some others are like, you can use us as a conduit, create it, send it to them and say, use this to engage the people in your community, post it on the website, whatever. I think that will reach a lot more people. And I can work on it, but it's a little less time frame sensitive. It's kind of like, we need to get some more educational material out. Maybe that's a start.
So, and those ideas are not mutually exclusive.
No, they're not.
You could do,
both.
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
It's just a matter of timing wise,
Yep.
like, can I get it together looking professional? Can we do it versus just like, it's a goal out there. We don't need to make it a short term, but I'll work on it.
okay,
Again, there is this question of just coming up with dates and venues. And, if we were to work with the Presbyterian Church again or something like that, we need to, continue the communication with them. Nice communication that's been started with the Sustainable Landscaping Workshop. So it might work well, but we would have to just focus in and sooner rather than later on a date that we want to pick. As again, I'm just suggesting on Thursday. I realize this is not the agenda item. The agenda item is reviewing responsibilities. But if before we leave today, we could say, let's ask, the church if they would be willing to do a second meeting sometime in early August on a Thursday evening. So.
okay. Next, the irrigation brochure.
It's done and ready, and it's sitting out here somewhere, and I have a couple hundred copies that I said we're going to try to use around.
Okay. So I can take it off the list. It's done.
Correct.
Okay.
The only separate part of that is we had discussed reinvigorating the irrigation subcommittee to maybe focus much more specifically around, redraft of regulations and, with no particular time frame, but I think a lot more narrow focus of, what do we think would work? And I can work with Peter on whether we'll have time in the next few months to try to gather that group for an initial conversation.
Next, the saltwater intrusion monitoring well. Joe Fenora.
Yeah, I haven't heard from him on that one. We did reach out to go over the Cronin mass balance analysis that I'd like.
Right.
But I guess he's still part-time.
Okay, so you're waiting for an
Yeah, I'm
answer.
waiting for him on that.
But there was an email from Joe, from the USGS saying they had updated their, I was having trouble opening up the document, but I thought it went to you, Andrew, as well. So
That
there
was
is-
about I think that email was about the.
Oh, it's about the-
baseline study.
the baseline.
Right.
Okay, my apologies. You're right.
Okay, perfect Earth event we've talked about. The 10-year baseline study, the status there is that the USGS has come back to Joe with different scope and price points associated with those different scopes. And Joe is meeting with them later this month and will be back to us at the July meeting with a recommendation. Then water quality in the town center. That's something I own. That's something that is going to be long and complicated. But Jessica did circulate Joe Fenora's presentation to the town board about the town, different alternatives for the town assets. But we'll get into that a little bit more. Okay. So I think that if we kind of keep tracking a list like this, so issues don't fall on the floor, that'll be helpful. Let's go to the next item on the agenda is member orientation. Everybody likes a field trip. So I've talked with Joe about this. Joe is going to provide a reading list of documents that he recommends that we all familiarize ourselves with, so we have a common knowledge set. I've asked for a field trip, and that trip, my thought on that trip would be to go to a monitoring well, so we actually see what one of these four monitoring wells looks like. So we're not just kind of taking in information, but we understand our number on a page, but we understand where that number is coming from and what's kind of the ups and downs and roundabouts associated with that data collection and so forth. That's one. The second thing that I'm particularly interested in is seeing on the ground, this is on the wastewater side, and it's a continuum, a cesspool, a septic tank, and an IA system. So that we because so much of the quality of the water in the aquifer is a function of what we're putting in it. It would be, I think, useful, for me at least, to understand those assets, how they work, what they do, what they don't do, what the pitfalls are of each. So I've asked Joe to set up probably a 3-hour session for us to go around and do this in the field. And I told him that I would solicit dates. So what I'll do is send you all an email over the next day or so, and with 3 or 4 suggested dates, and hopefully we can get people there. And remember, under the Open Public Meeting Act, this is just fine as long as we don't, if we're out there fact finding, as long as we don't discuss any matters before the committee. So is there anything else that anyone would like to see in the field or think would be useful here for our kind of common understanding?
Is this a repository of, that you had asked 12 months to 18 months, things that you wanted to, that you thought that would, that's not this.
That's not this. This is just member orientation. So we have a common knowledge set. So when we're
But
talking,
he's saying it's not this, the chart of to-dos, but those are short-term follow-ups. Those aren't the 12 to 18. We're not there yet,
we're
yeah.
not there yet, okay.
When USGS does their time domain, it would be interesting to at least observe how they make their measurements, their induction loop measurement system. You know, we don't need to read the meters, but at least understand what they're looking at, and how it translates.
So Andrew, when you have a moment, when you're ready.
Yep.
So
Just a
the
minute.
water, yeah, go ahead.
As I understand it, the USGS has two aspects of they're going to drill a deep well, but also
Yes.
do
So you're talking about the magnetic resonance part.
yeah, the perimeter measurements
Yes.
also.
So, and unfortunately, I guess with Joe part-time, because I had asked some questions of him when he was speaking to the town board, they still have to decide what the other sites are. And I don't think he's gotten yet to kind of determining what is the protocol of figuring out what the sites, generally where the sites are, and then specifically where the sites are. And presumably some of those will include, near shore areas, but so that, understanding how those decisions are made and why, and then what the breadth of information you'll wind up getting based on your choices, I think would be.
Okay, I'm adding this to the list. In other words, you'd like to know more about how that, not as much the deep saltwater well, but how the magnetic resonance imaging,
Yeah,
how
I
that
know
works?
I think it would be useful for the committee to understand.
Right.
I have a little understanding of it.
I have zero.
No. Well, then.
Right,
Then you more.
Right, right side, you're a clean sheet of paper.
You know, what does it tell you? What doesn't it tell you? And to how refined is the number and all that stuff? Yeah.
Right. Ron Busci, I never know how to pronounce his name exactly. Maybe Greg can help me. Buscialo. Anyway, they do have USGS does have a presentation about the magnetic resonance. One of the things that's interesting compared to the 10 years ago when they did do it is that they can get into much smaller spaces now and get much finer readings. So anyway, that will, and I agree, it would be absolutely fascinating to see.
Where is that, Peter? Where is the presentation?
I will look for the materials that they had previously. I will look for USGS materials on that and distribute to the committee. When in the past, the Water Advisory Committee, and Greg will remember some of this, visited the Heights wastewater system and also their pumping systems. So we did do a field trip 8-9 years ago. Ken would have been there as well. What we had, and we also did a field trip to the Daring Harbor system, and both their old water tower that failed and the new water tower. We could kind of see the old water tower spraying out water out of bullet-sized holes in its side. I think it would be really interesting to arrange a visit to West Neck and see their system and how their system works. I always wanted to go down into those hobbit holes, those little buildings on the, at the base of the golf course by Ice Pond.
Okay, Peter's put a couple of options on the table. The POC wastewater treatment plant, one of the POC wells, and then also a field trip to the West Neck system. This is going to be a lot to do in 3 hours. So
You
what's,
don't need two water supply systems.
yeah, so what's the preference of the committee?
Stella. Stella would have to get involved with the Heights.
Yeah, but what's the preference of the committee in terms of?
I don't have any preference, just.
If I may, I'll just express a quick preference that we do visit West Neck because, one, we have not as a committee done so ever, and two, that's the only system that the town actually owns and controls.
Okay,
An
so
outreach to them.
maybe the Heights wastewater treatment system that plant, and then also the West Neck system.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put a list together, but it's going to be some combination of all of that, and I'm going to solicit dates from you.
And the well measurement, right, was that's on that list?
Yes, okay, so what I
They're
have,
supposed to be there, they're supposed to be here this week. And that is going up, I mean, it's a very quick, 15 minutes should, it's a very fast thing. So
they being USGS?
Yes. Now, if they're doing it today, obviously, we're too late. If they're doing it on Thursday,
Okay,
they're going to 10 different sites. We could probably exchange, get phone numbers and figure out some way to get it. I'll call USGS and find out,
Okay.
where I think it's Marjorie now is doing the effort. It's the ice cream man,
right. Okay,
So, and not to deter you, but you brought it up with magnetic resonance. One of the things both, so the USGS 10 years coming round circle, right? Because we know that you said every plant. We have a sense of where the magnetic resonance is. They know they have to pick some local spots and even where the main drill is. And then you said separately in town here, they're discussing separate systems versus a few combined. I'd like us to get a better sense of like, what is the general expectation of time frame? And I don't know how mushy that is because I don't hear, Joe may have his own sense because he's driving it, but I don't often hear from the town, so at the next meeting, we're going to decide what, whether we're doing individual, septics at every whatever, or we're going to combine. It just seems to be rolling along. And so I don't know where the imperative is. You're going to be digging in, so I'm sure you'll be, but like, what is the time frame for some of these things? Because we meet and then it's like, where is it at? I don't.
I expect at the next meeting that I'll have a better sense of the process.
Okay.
I certainly do not expect an answer.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
But, okay. All right, that's enough administration. Well, status report, Greg.
Well, I don't have much information right now. Only 2 of the wells I was able to access. They're doing readings this week. So a very unusual information came through on, we actually had a very slight uptick on the Goat Hill well, which at this time of year is very odd. I mean, it's had 3 or 4 measurements that are almost, they're within a few tenths of a foot. So it's very unusual. And the other one is the other well I was able to get information off of was the White Birch well, which is at the end of Silver Beach there.
Which is one of the big 4 or not?
No.
It is not, no, only Hill, the only big 4 that I have is the Hill. Right now, it was about 9 per, it went up to from 9 last month. The Goat Hill was, the percentile was down at 9. Right now, it's up at 26 percentile.
Wow.
Because that's big a change. This was, where usually it was dipping down now. So the median number that we're using drags it down. And White Birch was at 75% percentile. That's less interesting and less surprising because it's very close to the sounds. And at that point, if I think the information that I had came through, and we had some pretty strong winds, so the tides were high, but tides were low. It was taken. I grabbed the number, I think, about the 14th, which was just about high tide. And that influences, that has a lot of influence.
See, Goat Hill went from, up by
Yeah,
what, from 9 to 26?
That is just raw numbers, but you've got the chart there, that's raw numbers, so.
Oh, 9%. Well, yeah, no, I'm looking at Goat Hill being a lagging well. So that would be, I could see that happening. You'd expect that.
You would not, it did
You
not.
would, no, you would expect it. It's just later. It just comes later than the other wells. That's what it seems.
It could be, but I'd have to take a look, and, we'll see what, I'll have all the numbers this week, and I'll send out the report to everybody, so you'll have it in hand, you can take a look. And maybe we can just get an email dialogue going if there's any additional questions.
So after the last meeting, I went back and called on my high school journalism skills to write that to write that short message about the drought.
Yeah.
Or about the well levels. And what I took out of it was that we were at basically a 10-year low on a seasonally adjusted basis in those big four wells in terms of well levels.
Probably true, yes, that would be true.
Right, okay, so, and that we were going into the summer, which is a period of significant withdrawals.
Correct.
So it's really important to conserve water. That was the message. Okay, but the key data point, and I had a very hard time expressing the data in grocery store English, was we're at a 10-year low on a seasonally adjusted basis. Are we still kind of there, or we don't know yet?
We don't know yet. For what's going on with the Goat Hill well, staying stable, I have no explanation for that. And I don't have the other numbers.
Staying
They were all
stable.
ticking up in the raw
Yes.
numbers. The aquifer themselves were higher than normal.
Okay, so when you say Goat Hill staying
Yeah, what
stable,
I just said higher than normal, that's not correct. What they have increased.
right?
Then, which is not
Yes.
a normal thing to happen.
Okay, well, when you say staying stable, you're talking about absolute, so that on a percentile basis,
It changes very
they're
quickly.
going up. On a seasonally adjusted
I
basis,
don't
they're
think
going
you
up.
can add the seasonally adjusted, because I don't think we do seasonally adjusted. It's not like,
That's what he does.
well, you don't adjust the well levels by the season. You plot
No, if you
them
look
on the
at-
calendar, yeah, but.
No, it's, there are 12 lists, there are 12 files that Excel files that have all the previous from 25 years back now.
Yeah.
And each time I put in the new readings and then do a new median value. All right.
Because the question is
Then
it's not the median overall, is it the median for that month
That
over
month,
time?
that
So
well.
that's the season, that would be
the
essentially a seasonal look.
It's like last meeting, we had the 10% well, down, the average was down at 10% for the big four. And
For
that
the
was,
percentile.
yeah,
That's
the
correct.
percentile.
But that was specific
the lowest we ever
to,
seen.
that was
Absolutely.
specific to an April reading,
That is correct.
That's right.
yeah.
So
Not an average over the 12 months,
when you look at the chart that says that it's got the raw data, that's what the well is doing right now. That's the value of the aquifer height.
Right.
The other numbers are, and there's no seasonal adjustment there. When you look at it, the seasonal adjustment goes up and down by the season. But the percentile numbers take into account 25 years worth of information that we have on the well.
On that month.
On that month, on that well.
Right, on that month, on that well. So that's the seasonal.
That's the
adjustment.
seasonal, yeah.
Yes.
Because you have to work in a seasonal adjustment in order to analyze it. In order to understand what's
Okay, so last month, we were at a 10-year low on a seasonally adjusted basis on the big four wells.
That's
And
correct.
we don't know where we are this month because you've only got one of the top of the
That's
big
correct.
4 wells in.
Yes.
But that big 4 well, Goat Hill, is actually looking at a significant improvement on a seasonally
That's
adjusted
correct.
basis.
It's not going down, and none of the wells were going down last month. So it's,
So in fact,
Weird.
you know, what we're looking at, we do have the rainfalls, and the rainfall for May was extremely good, caught us up. But as I mentioned before, Dave very wisely pointed out that there's a difference between rainfall in the spring and in the winter, and it would be good to validate to the degree to which we don't get recharge from spring rains, or we possibly do. Perhaps that one well is showing us that we are getting some recharge from 8 or 9 inches of rain in just May. But clearly we do better if if the seasonal patterns were remaining stable. Unfortunately, that's precisely what's going wrong. We have more rain than we tend to get more rain than we got 20 years ago. We just don't necessarily get it at the right time.
So, two questions if I may. So you'll issue your report that would have been at this meeting once that data comes in, so we'll have a total sense. And I guess hopefully all that rain translated into something that makes us feel not worse, and if not, potentially a little more comfortable. If that's not the case, and there is data that is potentially more alarming, do we have the ability to do an ad hoc meeting ourselves so they're not waiting for the next meeting to discuss whether there is something, another warning, something, to do? I mean, we can maybe decide it once we look at the data, but I'm just wondering procedurally, we don't want to get the data and go, oh no, all right, we'll see you in July and talk about it, right?
Okay, so as your process captain, I will find out from the town what we need to do for the 4 of us to discuss that data. If the data comes in and it's pretty obvious that it needs attention,
Yeah.
and it's pretty obvious that it needs attention, I'll find out from the town what we have to do to be able to talk about it, and we'll do it over Zoom, or we'll do it.
You just call a special meeting.
Well, I don't know what the process is behind noticing that and all that process.
But we'll learn it and then we were ready.
Okay.
And we did when we built the drought levels, and I realized that we've decided to be a little bit loose about drought, calling drought levels. But when we did try to establish drought levels that would be posted on the website, we did make a special procedure where the engineer could look between meetings and on his own decide, oh, it should be adjusted. So Joe has we have previously sort of delegated some authority to Joe between meetings if numbers are coming in that are looking particularly alarming.
Okay. Great, thank you.
okay.
Let's now go to WAC objectives for the next 12 to 18 months. Next item on the agenda, number 6. Look, what this is about is us having our own agenda for what we want to accomplish, rather than just kind of being in the flow and having issues come at us and reacting. So I had asked each of you to think about what you would like us to accomplish as a committee, and just we'll brainstorm it. And I had put a couple out that I was interested in taking on, but who would like to go first? And my thought was the committee first, the town board liaisons next, and then if anybody's from the public who would like to.
All right, I'll take a whack at it. There were some emails from, I guess, within the last month, talking about education, the value that to try and educate. And there is the great public water versus private water debate. It seems to me that one of the key elements of understanding the public water is the role of water districts and how that separates parts of the town or merges them, depending on how depending on how we decide to do water districts. And I think going and taking the time, look at the terms, look at the implications of the different things you can do, would be 12 months from now, if necessary, would be a very beneficial thing that people, instead of, well, I heard that from that guy, he said that, and it may or may not be true, find out confirm what's true, document it, and so that when the debate starts again, hot and heavy, and maybe we have less than 12 months we have to do this next week, I guess. And just put that together as an educational piece with the analysis of you can just do Silver Beach, a water district for Silver Beach, and you could do another one for Hay Beach, and you could do another one for the center, or do you just want to have one big water district from those areas? I don't know the implications of that on who's paying and how many wells are going to what's necessary to happen at that point. The role of Suffolk County Water Authority, what rights do they have to do things to our water system, and the different ways that Suffolk County is being used. It's, where West Neck Water District it's a water district, and it's contracting Suffolk County to run it. Stella, I presume that the Heights is a water district, and that they're running it on their own. Daring Harbor, I suspect, I'm not sure how Daring Harbor is doing it, but so that would be a benefit in terms of getting those issues resolved as an educational piece, as an information piece that will help people make decisions on where they think the public water effort should be.
Okay, so I'm going to try and generalize your question, which is, what are the potential institutional arrangements around delivering water to the public that are available to us under New York state law? So can we form a water district? Who would have to form it? What is it? What powers would it have? How would the rates be set? So forth. How might it apply here?
Yeah.
What's the Heights? What is it from a legal standpoint? How does it work? What's West Neck? So that we have, and what's the deliverable? The deliverable might be a 5-page paper that describes these institutional arrangements in grocery store English that people can understand.
This is the number of questions that I came up with.
Got it.
And it's probably, 25% of what's really needed to foster a knowledged population. So I'll send this out to everybody. This is, again, it is not definitive. There's a lot of things in here on this list that I think we know, and that. But
we've had these conversations about a single district versus multiple districts. I don't want to comment extensively on what you were just saying. You presented the questions very well, Greg. I do recall back in Mike Bebon's chairmanship, the concept of one island, one water was very appealing. But then in discussion, and particularly Joe's analysis, was that having each community be somewhat independent, had something to be said for it. We can revisit this as we actually explore what you're suggesting, which is deliverable describing what the considerations are.
Yeah, I think you probably both described it relatively well, and I think the risk probably at this stage is like getting way too far into the weeds versus what is it that we know, what are the big areas of things that we never quite sure we know about how it works without trying to lay out district maps of like, you know, it have to be this or that, you know, because when no one's concluded that we're going that way, we're just trying to say like, if we started to lean in for some particular reason in some particular area, like better to have a sense of this stuff, you know, on the table beforehand, right? So I think one of the things that we lost with Lisa, and maybe she will come back and
Help us.
you know, and help us at one point, is because I've never, and I'm not sure I'm ready to read their document with the Suffolk County Water Authority, but I know she probably knows
And Andrew,
if I could do it again, what I know now, what wouldn't I agree to? Or what do I know that don't want to agree to, but they're not negotiable, they're not going to let us do? Like kind of what are some of those things that are like, you know, big issue things of.
Okay, all right, that's a good.
yeah, and I'll just point out that it's not just what we decide to do. One of the reasons to do the exercise that Greg is pointing out is that it's when West Neck Water didn't come to the WAC in the 1990s and say we wanted to create it, they themselves, they went to the board, but they said, you know, we want to create our own water district. And what's going to happen is that a community that's under distress, I don't want to say which one it might be, but some community that's under distress might come to us and be asking what would be involved if we wanted to create a water supply for our community.
Right.
Right.
And what are the implications, you know, financial and cultural, God knows.
Well, we know a fair amount. We actually, this has been researched before. We may not have created a concise document out of it. So,
Okay, so the purpose is to get these things on the table as kind of question areas, not to try and answer them. Anybody else want to put something on the table?
We're just under the general, and I think we've already talked about it, because this is just, there'll probably be several items of under the education thing, which I think we're all going to agree is a priority. And so the 101 of sorts, right, of, you know, again, of getting people to just understand the basics of how their water is coming to them and what are some of the issues. And in that process, at least part of the 101 that I created, the end of it was the benefit of testing. So in regards to that, it goes hand in hand for me of, it is about encouraging testing so that at least people have more data, maybe we'll get the benefit of that data over time, but that goes kind of hand in hand of
yeah, and
educate them enough that they should be like, I really want to know now what my
really
water
want to
is.
test my water.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would be more specific at that presentation a couple of weeks ago that the Suffolk County Health Department made. They reiterated a point that came up when they did a presentation to us, which was that it's less than 400 tests that have been requested in the last decade, which is pathetic. Nobody is testing their water. I mean, except for the few of us who are tuned in. If I have a goal for the next 18 months for the Water Advisory Committee, it would be to quadruple that number. To really get testing being something, you know, happening thing. And we should be all set up for that. We have an email address for, you know, we should really be able to get communities going. We should be able to get Montclair Colony tests and Menantic Peninsula tests happening. So maybe Silver Beach as well over these next couple of months. The fall would be the target time, by the way. Right after all the usage and before, yeah, anyway. So testing and education would be mine, and would be the main things. The one thing I would just add to testing is it's not just about individual homeowner testing. We actually need to know what resources we have. The testing in Sachem's Woods that's never happened, whether or not you think that it's going to, you know, there are going to be negative implications of it, it should be tested. We should know what resources we have available. We should know what options there are. Does the town have an option for a water source? Perhaps, just limited and probably would only have capacity for a very small area of the municipal buildings and maybe some of the most distressed areas of the center. Obviously, we don't want to trigger, no development has always been sort of, we don't want to fix our water because we don't want density. I get that. And so we have to reassure both sides on that particular item. But we need to know what our resources are, what the town's resources are. And again, they've offered, Suffolk County Water Authority has offered at their expense to do the testing of Sachem's Woods water.
Well, I guess there may be some synergies in that if USGS is
Yes, doing
testing the main well that they choose, if there winds up being support to put it in Sachem Woods, you may not even need Suffolk County water. You may have a well, you may be able to get it tested and, what have you.
USGS is able to analyze that water, the fresh
yeah.
water as well as the salt
I think
water.
the question, quite honestly, and I don't hide from the facts is, is there going to be a pushback to not put the USGS well in Sachem Woods because people are afraid that it is creeping towards a conclusion rather than its own independent kind of, look, we're just gathering facts kind of thing.
Okay,
I think we have to let the science dictate.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can't.
I mean, quite honestly, if USGS goes there and we can kind of keep Suffolk County water at bay, kind of like just keep them out of it at the moment, and we can test the water. That might be better for kind of communal discussion because it's not, aggravating anyone. It's like, look, we're really just kind of
Science.
yeah.
all right. So I'll put testing as kind of big topic number 2. Big topic number 1, I'm going to just call institutional arrangements. Okay, what else we got?
Understanding our aquifer, the dynamics of it, or already started that process. So,
Okay,
well,
correct. The discussion we had about when the
yeah,
rainfall
when
happens.
the rainfall
Right.
happens, how much do we get? I mean,
Yeah.
if we get certain significant events in the summertime that can punch through the evapotranspiration factor of all the growth, how significant are those events? Which that's analysis Greg and I can do, which is encouraging, on the summer recharge, and in the investigation I've done so far, it looks like unless we're getting 4 inches of rain a month, we lose.
Okay, what other unanswered, what other big questions are in your head around the aquifer, other than that timing issue?
I don't know yet. I'm looking.
Okay,
That's what we want to look at. See, the more you look at it, the more it'll tell you what's going
all
on.
right. What resources do you need to really understand it?
I think we have a great resource right here, all this data.
Okay, so it's really just, you think by mining the data we've got?
I think so. We might even get to the point where if we could ever assess the island from a vegetative state, how much of the island is deciduous, how much of it is lawn, how much of it is maybe that's available someplace. But you could take that factor and convert it into the recharge analysis. That's long term. That's blue sky kind of thing. You'd have to.
I've been a proponent of a tree code on the island for the last 18 months or so.
Yeah, that's
which is
I'm just trying to.
no, but it's in the same vein. It's in
Yeah.
kind of all these things are tangent. We realize all of these discussions relate back to each other.
Somebody even asks us, should I take out my trees and put it on lawn? What's the
Yeah.
right answer?
Yeah.
Or take out my lawn and put in a mossy area.
There you go. Yeah, right. I mean, what would we tell them? I don't know. I think the
Well,
answer.
that, again, the natural landscaping is, it's being supported by the WAC and the Green Committee together because these things go hand in hand, the greenery and how the recharge occurs. And so, anyway.
Okay, all right. Understanding the aquifer, and that's, okay, so those two questions were quantity-related questions? Is there a whole nother set of questions around quality, or are you more focused on quantity? Quantity.
I'm not
That's what that
I'm not a
data-
chemist.
That's what the data is specific to, so that's where you can find it.
Yeah. As far as, I'm not a chemist, so I don't want to go there.
Okay. All right. All right, I had a couple that I had mentioned last week. One is 12 to 18 months from now, I'd like the town to have a comprehensive plan with regard to its own properties, handling the wastewater from its own properties, the water supply to its own properties, as well as addressing the water quality issues in the center triangle. Right now, with regard to the center triangle, we have a recommendation on our WAC website to get your well tested, and based on those results, to follow professional advice. That's what we say. We don't say anything more. The policy question is whether that's the right guidance. What's fascinating to me about this, having spent some time in the water business, is that the history that leads to our current zoning rules and so forth is that if you had a big enough lot, you can process your wastewater and abstract your well water off a lot and you'll be okay. That's the theory behind the zoning rules. What's happened since that theory came to be is that now we're measuring for things that septic tanks are not treating for. PFAS, pharmaceutical fragments, whatever else. So the idea that you can continue to do that is in question. Because we've got a lot of non-conforming lots in the center of the island, that issue is coming to us more quickly than in other parts of the island. The basic problem, we're not alone in this. Every community in America that has well and septic on smaller individual lots is in theory facing the same thing. So we're not alone. What does all that mean for us in terms of a comprehensive plan for water and wastewater for the center area? So I'd like to, 12 to 18 months from now, I'd like to have real clarity on those questions. And that will require us, I think, to engage with the town itself on its own properties. And it may also require us to do more testing in the center. But exactly what the steps are, I haven't figured out yet, but that's the set of questions. It is geographically focused on the center.
How can we find out other communities? Can you say other communities?
Look at all of Suffolk County.
Is there good information on them?
Yes, Suffolk County, in general, has this problem, right?
Yeah.
That's why they started the whole IE program. The county they have a comprehensive wastewater treatment plan for Suffolk County that looked into all of this. It looked into all the details of all the communities out here, and kind of gives you all that information. It's in the SharePoint, in WAC SharePoint. It's
And
the
referenced in the studies list.
Yeah.
It's not
Okay.
summarized because
Yep.
it's too big, but it's referenced in the studies list.
Right, there's two studies that were done. One was the comprehensive water management plan, which looked at all water, fresh, salt, groundwater. And then the other one is the sub-watersheds wastewater management plan, which is the one I would recommend you look at.
Which
They're
one
like
was it?
1,000 pages, the sub-watersheds wastewater management plan. And that's definitely in your SharePoint. If not, I can find a link for it and send it to you if you can't find it.
Did you
And
say it's 1,000 pages?
Easily, yeah.
That's why, again,
Very
like,
interesting.
AI could not summarize it. Those of you, those of you who have had, who haven't looked at the studies index, I did send a link out to all of you. Try clicking on it. Dave, you probably will find that you need to ask me for permission to be able to get into that spreadsheet. It's a worthwhile spreadsheet to have access to. It's all, goes back 30 years. It has, including what was just presented by the Suffolk County Health Department now, summarized as well. So you have a short one-pager or less on the key findings and recommendations of each one of these studies. Again, with the exception of what Meg is referring to, the 2,000-page studies that ChatGPT says, are you kidding?
But it's interesting because it also gives you a bit of a history on how we got to this place and why we're in this mess.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting read. And there is an executive summary that's only about 20 to 25 pages, so that's helpful too. But you can also search the document. If you search for Shelter Island, it'll bring you to sections of the document that are Shelter Island specific, which is helpful because it's a lot.
So also nationally, there's something called the Rural Water Association, which looks at drinking water quality in well and septic-based communities throughout the US. They have to be onto this because it's an issue that as you jack up the quality standards and you start to pick up things that a septic tank doesn't, a well-functioning septic system doesn't treat,
No, sure.
you're going to have these contaminants. And those standards are going up nationwide. So, okay. All right, so that's number 4, which was a comprehensive plan for water and wastewater for the town center. The other one I had was Bridge Street. And so my issue with Bridge Street, or my questions with Bridge Street are, that is a important commercial center for the island. An important commercial center needs reliable and safe and affordable drinking water. It also needs a wastewater processing assets that don't adversely affect the environment. I don't really know enough about what's going on Bridge Street to be able to definitively say those standards are met. So I feel we need to understand what exactly is going on in Bridge Street. And if that standard is not met, what do we recommend to meet that standard? Now, I'm also told that there's a long and potentially tortured history with regard to Bridge Street. So I expect it to be complicated and a bunch of different dimensions.
Well, do we know how many properties we're talking about in that defined area? Is it like a dozen? Is that really the
6.
6? So, I mean, I think and maybe it already exists, but that's easy enough to map out where's their well and where's their septic system for those 6 and what is the elevation. I'm not just see what that says.
See what it is,
Yeah.
where it takes us.
What's the solution?
It sounds
I don't
easy.
know, but you got to start with knowledge.
We got to start with knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds easy, but I have a feeling that where's the septic tank? And you're gonna get, occasionally you'll get a shrugged shoulder, damn if I know.
Oh, I think the question's actually easy to ask. I think it's fairly difficult to find the answers. So
Well, thankfully, it's only 6 properties, so I mean, that's
it's single digits probably.
Yeah.
So, but the agenda today is just to get the issues on the table, not to solve them, okay? All right, so I've got 5. Again, institutional arrangements, testing, understanding the aquifer, with a focus on, that's a quantitative understanding at this point. comprehensive plan for the center, Bridge Street. Anything else any members of the committee want to put on to the table?
Not right now, because I had a couple of things rattling around in my brain, but I'm not ready to try and speak to them.
All right?
And just Andrew, that in that testing category, it was education and testing.
Yes.
I think if we're not creating aha moments for people who live here more broadly than there are now, you know, it's just an easy thing not to think about where your toilet flushes to, and it's an easy thing not to think about, well, where's it coming back in your sink?
Right. Okay. Our liaisons on the town board, anything you would like to add to this list?
Yeah, I think that we're sort of in the middle of a few longitudinal studies. You know, I think a lot of the data that we're going to collect from the water testing, this is sort of the beginning of a long-term study on the quality of our aquifer, not necessarily so much quantity, but I think we're kind of in the beginning of figuring that out. I mean, we have some information from a while ago. We have estimates that were done in the 90s with their comp plan on what they thought the nitrate level in our aquifer would be in like 2050, and they thought a max of 3, we're already seeing 5. So I think we're just starting to like collect the data to be able to have a more comprehensive long-term view of what kind of contaminants and maybe the rate of change of those contaminants over time. So I think that continuing with the testing and encourage people to do the testing is going to be very good for that. The other one that I think that we're sort of in the middle of or beginning of is the saltwater intrusion study. I think by doing the second round of the saltwater intrusion study with the imaging and the magnetic resonance, and if we can get the test well in the center here, that would be amazing. That will help us determine what kind of change we're seeing over time, because we did this, 10 years ago? So now we'll have the first benchmark, this will be a second benchmark, if we can repeat this again in another 10 years or even 5 to 10 years and just see how that'll give us some idea of how it's changing on the coast, and maybe we can correlate that with how sea level has changed over that decade, because we know it has changed faster than was anticipated. So I think that we have a few long-term studies that are going on that are really going to help us be able to plan better for the future, especially in the nearshore areas, and also in the center as far as possible infrastructure needs go. The other thing that I would like to see, and I don't think this is totally the WAC, is for areas like Bridge Street, something that would be very, very helpful would be a LWRP, which is a long process. It's a local waterfront revitalization plan. It's not necessarily named well because it's not always to revitalize a business district, but it is to coordinate with the state and the county and the town to set standards for an area of the island or the entire island based on location, based on where you have wetlands. It's really kind of a comprehensive plan for how to manage your coast. And so that's something that I would like to look into, probably not in the next 2 years, but it's a 3-year process from beginning to end, and it's with coordination of the state. So that I think could be very helpful for the town when it comes to future planning and understanding what our needs are. It could also help a lot with getting funding to do some of these bigger projects and to manage flooding in some areas and things like that. So that's another thing on my list. I'd love to wrap up the comprehensive plan because that can help us get grant funding to do some of these bigger projects. I think that you're on the right track. I think education is key in the beginning to help getting people up to speed and understanding just the basics of the day-to-day, how we live here, how all of the things we do interact with each other and the other aspects of what we want to do with our life. What you do on your lawn affects how you swim in the water. So I think helping to spread the education and teach people all of that is a really great next step. So I think you're on the right path. I think you got some big topics here, so it's good, looks good.
Gordon?
Yep. It's funny how WQIP, WAC, we're all interconnected. okay? And, you know, the position that I have taken, okay, is that we really literally, you know, it's one thing to supply with water, or however that comes about, but I think, I think that you mentioned earlier, Andrew, about the town's responsibility, and I do think our responsibility is really, we're asking people to be cautious of what they're doing, what they're putting in the ground, chemicals, and all these other things. And I think my priority really is basically that in the center here is the municipal buildings, okay? I think it does no harm, okay, to putting up the septics in the center, okay, while we research what's the avenue relative to clean water, okay? And I think I'm coming to the table, and, you know, just publicly, is that I really like to follow the data and really have a better understanding, okay? And we started here in the center with a wastewater, or I should say wastewater septic system, okay? And I'd like to complete this, okay? And really, I think this, you talk about Bridge Street being a certain number of buildings, I think we can do the same thing here. Well, when Suffolk County came, they basically were very congenial because they really wanted to work with us. And there were things they couldn't even answer at that time because they didn't really know what we wanted, okay? And I think that's what the board has to determine. What do we want, okay? How do we see it, okay? And I think rather than saying how you feel about it, I think it's good to have the data that supports how you feel. Because if I'll go straight forward, okay, and I wish everyone would come the same way, that, you know, if there are no other alternatives, okay, for clean water, and we need a municipal water system, I'm all in, okay? But if we have other alternatives, I would like us to really embrace the fact that we may not need a whole infrastructure in a small town like we have. Doesn't mean we shouldn't know what our alternatives are. I think, Sean, your conversation about, you know, knowing what your natural resources are and what you can do, I think that's really important. But to me, I would really, a lot of time has gone by, okay? And I think there's a responsibility, I think we have a responsibility to clean up the center, our septics here. This has been going on, and it's not a question of plopping down things and making Band-Aids here. I think, I just would like to spend more time in this task force group that we have sort of formed, okay, to identify it, and then you can get into the cost aspects relative to water. My main issue is that we spent all this money and we talked about all these lines of effluent going into Anantic Creek and all this other stuff and how it affects the center, okay? I think we have an obligation, at least take this off the table, that we're not contributing. We're a part of the solution of solving the problem. The water thing, I think it will come about, and but I just think we need to be serious. It's almost like you need to have a room like this and lock the room off and say, hey, you're not coming out of here until you know what you're looking for. Because what happens is it's like a short space of time. You know, a committee you meet once a month. It's enough already. We're too long. We can't. I don't think we should be waiting, 4 weeks for every time we meet. We should be working on a more regular basis, okay? But I think your goals and the way you're presenting it, you're saying the same thing I'm saying, is that, you want data to support really where you're going from. And I'm not suspecting that it's anything easy, but I guess I sort of feel, I always, anything can be done. Okay, I guess that's what it boils down to, and when Suffolk County created the program with trying to clean up the septics and the water quality, they realized also, okay, that's why they had that referendum where they put a certain amount of money towards sewage systems versus individual well systems or individualized systems. It doesn't mean that all of the island needs it, and and you're not suggesting that, okay? And the thing that we really don't talk about, okay, enough is our waterfront, okay, how we're affecting the water, okay? But it's really hard, how can the town mandate, let's say, even take West Neck Bay, if we wanted to clean up that West Neck Bay, one of the easier things would be to have a mandated IA system. But I don't think the town's in a position to mandate anything until we got our own house under control. But I think there's a lot of things with trees. We got a lot of things going on here that we can do, but I think you're doing a good job, and I hope that we can have something before the end of this year relative to a plan. Okay, so we can take it to the Suffolk County Water, the Health Department, and they can help us and provide for us and give us some guidance.
All right.
So just to comment on that, I think you have to dig in and, come back with a better understanding. But I think a big part of that is also what can be broken off and have a win, whether it's septics first, whether it's whatever, right? I mean, because we keep talking about, and I've heard it, and I'm not knowledgeable enough to speak, fluently, but do we do all the buildings at once? Do we break apart? At some point, we're too much discussion, and you got to just break off some things and get them done.
A lot of what we have to do as a committee is to define our problem so that we don't become a victim of scope creep, and and therefore so that we don't get so bogged down in trying to do everything that we do nothing.
Yep.
So it's one of the tough issues about water because it touches everything. So part of what I'm going to do coming out of this meeting is to try and narrow and define these issues. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yep.
I'm just gonna take the town building wastewater treatment stuff off your plate, because we already have a committee working on that. And kind of determining our water options is going to dictate, that's the linchpin on how we're gonna be able to site wastewater. So we'll have some answers in the upcoming future, but by the end of the year, this will not be done. I'm just gonna give you a realistic understanding that it's gonna take, we won't be installing these this year. Permitting-wise,
No, I don't think anybody thought that.
Yeah.
I think,
Plan.
yeah.
We're working towards a plan, but we have to understand some fundamental issues around our water supply and our wastewater supply and how they're gonna work together and what the best options for the town are gonna be. Some of that is determining, is Sachem's Woods viable for water? We don't know. But until we get some answers on some questions, we can't come up with the most optimal plan for this area, right? The wastewater treatment plant that we had designed 2 years ago was the most optimal solution for dealing with the center area, because the problem we had was that this area was so tight and there were so many variances required that it didn't make sense to try to site wastewater and water in the same area, which is why we thought if we move wastewater to an area where it didn't have any scientifically determined impact on neighbors, then we could deal with the water independently here. So one or the other has to get centralized. Otherwise, logistically, it's going to be very close to impossible to making it work without multiple variances. By definition, a variance is not meeting the sanitary code. So if you need multiple variances, you're not meeting the sanitary code on multiple levels. So the goal is to minimize the variances we need and come up with the most efficient, cost-effective system for the town and the taxpayers, while also looking at the antiquated infrastructure that we have in all these buildings. So it is a big project. It's not going to be a simple plug and play, we can just pop that out and put this here. It takes a lot of thought and a lot of time to really plan it out correctly. So that's kind of what we're in the middle of.
I think we generally understand that, and I don't think, and speaking for myself, but I don't think anyone on this committee thinks that we're going to dig in and make very specific recommendations about where you should put a well or a this or a that. But I think as part, at least from my perspective, as part of our responsibility, we need to understand better, I need to understand better, where are you at in your process? And what are the very specific next steps? And do you have timelines on those? Or is it just this ongoing dialogue that we know it's big and we're going to keep discussing it, which that kind of thing makes me weary because you'll have the same conversation 2 years from now. So that's where just like at some point, I think we need to be a little bit of a nudge to you guys to say like, so, you know, where are you at? Where are you on this? So that, because should be some of the most educated people on the island about where it stands and what the public or what anybody should be doing, encouraging you in priorities, right? So,
Okay, again, we're not trying to solve these issues, we're trying to define them. Okay. And I'm not shutting you down. Okay. So now for the public members, is there anything that anyone would like to put on our list as a priority for the next 12 to 18 months? Yes. Go to the podium.
Oh, yes.
Identify yourself.
I'm Howard Johansson from the Conservation Advisory Council, Chairman. It's a very good meeting and you bring up a lot of items. I don't know how you're gonna do all of these in a year, but at least you'll have a plan and you can hit certain ones. And I think all the committees of the town should be together on this because it affects every committee has an influence on what is happening to our properties and our water. Now we're in the summertime when we have a large influx of summer people. And we're a community of that. And we're not just a residential community. And as far as testing goes, I don't want to go ahead of this big thing, but I have a comment on the testing. Montclair and Atlantic Peninsula. I'll wait till you get to it.
Okay.
Right. But I think you're on the right track. Boy,
it's a long track.
yeah, and the longer we wait, more costly any solution. Whether it's central or individual, it's a big problem. Whether it's a government problem or an individual problem. Water, septic. So I just want to mention that.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Anyone else from the public?
Pam's got a
Pam, oh, I guess Pam has her hand up, sorry.
Yes,
Pam?
thank you very much. Yes, I just have one question about the watershed management plan of 2014. There was discussion, a bunch of months ago that you folks were going to look into that and get that updated because that will become an element of the comprehensive plan. And since that's also become a part of this conversation, that was going to get reviewed and updated since it's 11 years old at this point and seems rather outdated. I thought that that might be a priority for this committee to take a look at. And the only other thing that I'd like to question the committee, maybe you can get the answer. I was under the impression that Sachem's Woods was preserved for aquifer recharge and not for water withdrawal. And I realized that I've heard many times that it seems to be a possibility now for a saltwater intrusion, USGS well, that could then be sampled. That came up recently in conversation. I just would like someone, whether it's this committee or the town board liaisons who are present, can look into it and make sure that in fact water withdrawal is permitted in that open preservation stewardship plan for Sachem's Woods.
Yes.
I think that's imperative that gets clarified in one way or another.
I can answer that, Pam. The land at Sachem's Woods was actually purchased for the intention of putting public water wells in. That's why it was bought back in the day. They were looking forward and they thought, someday we might need to bring public water to some parts of the island. And they thought that would be a good location to draw from. So it was actually purchased with the intention of putting wells there.
I'm sorry, I
Okay.
couldn't understand how it was purchased if it was just put aside as open preserve. So I'm not really sure I understand the answer, but we can take that up another time. But again, the wastewater management plan, I think, is very important. And one of the documents that was missing from your list is the Deering Harbor sub-watershed plan. I realize that's not technically Shelter Island, but we are one island and they are part of that. So perhaps you'll want to look into that information too. It's got very good information on that peninsula of Shelter Island. And
Kim,
it's
do you have it?
quite,
Do you have access to that document?
I do.
Could you forward it to us?
I can,
That'd
sure.
be helpful.
That's not a
We
problem.
we should index that into the studies index.
Yes, I agree. It's full of very, very good information about even solving issues all around the island where
Mhm.
there's been flooding down this road or that, or, outwash or whatever. So that was very thoroughly done.
Yeah, thank you. That
Yeah.
would be very helpful.
So, all right, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Is there a town resolution on record that speaks specific to it? And if there is, can you just pull it up and send it and then, we're done with it?
There's a whole contract from when it was purchased. It was not purchased through CPF. So we've just used it as open space, but the intention behind it was for public water at some point in the future.
Okay,
Why would
can
we
you
want to-
circulate that?
You need to see the whole document.
Yeah. That would help everyone, I think, to be able to just make that public and say,
I'm trying to move this along. Stella has her hand up.
Hi, everyone. So I don't really have authority from our board to raise this, but I think it's prudent to just get the concept of interoperability on the table as a placeholder between water districts. So if we do go in the direction of more public water districts, and those water districts have close proximity, just as a backup in case one district has an issue, being able to interoperate between the two in an emergency, I think would be really helpful. And, we thought about it with West Neck Water back in the day, but at the time, West Neck did not have enough capacity to help the Heights. So we kind of just tabled discussions. So to the extent you think this concept of interoperability fits in your plan somewhere, I would just say put it on the list as a placeholder.
Okay, thanks, Stella.
I'll put it on this.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else? Okay, what I'll do as homework after this meeting is try and put these together in terms of really crisp, well-defined issues. And we can take a look at them at the next meeting and see what we think is actionable over 12 to 18 months and what is less likely to be actionable, because if the list is too long, we will flail away and we will accomplish nothing. So, which is, I don't think any of us wants to do. Okay, that's item 6 of the agenda. Item 7 of the agenda, which is the USGS baseline, the 10-year baseline study. I mentioned before that Joe Fenora will be meeting with the USGS later in June and will be back to us in the July meeting with scope and cost options. Water quality testing update. I did speak with Joe about this. And essentially what's going on here is, let me get my notes. With regard to Montclair, the Montclair Association, as far as Joe knows, no participating homeowners have logged in or submitted their test results into the town database, but it's fairly early in the process. So that's what he was able to tell me about that. And with regard to Silver Beach, This is a water quality testing program that is being initiated by the Suffolk County Health Department. They do this as a matter of course, where private well tests indicate a problem, a potability problem. They go back to the neighborhood and test at their cost through the neighborhood to try and see whether there is a widespread issue and to try to define that issue. There was at least one private water quality test in Silver Beach, which had PFOAs over the maximum contaminant level. And as a result, they are doing voluntary testing in certain parts of Silver Beach. But I don't know the results of it.
Wasn't that one area of several hotspots that Suffolk County was coming on the island to do? I thought there was also one in Hay Beach or something they were having. So maybe we could get a sense of how many of them are, because I've heard that there are.
You should have gotten this
Yes,
from the county.
this was his presentation to the
You should
town
have-
board.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's that one that was just recently.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's Heinz.
yeah.
Jason, right.
And where's it, does it, sorry, I mean, I read it at one point. Are they specific to how many spots or they just
Yeah.
reference?
But I don't see Silver Beach per se.
I think this is older.
I'm unclear.
Because I think it's a similar presentation they did last year, so. So I'm not sure it reflects that,
Is
yeah.
that
It
it?
changes, I mean.
What's the only
every
one?
once in a while
Yeah,
we get
that's right.
reports that the health department wants to test areas and are we involved? Like, no, it's their own protocol. So if someone does a well test that shows high on something random like
Yeah.
PFAS or, then they want to go and just check with all the
Yeah.
neighbors to make sure it's not something that's widespread, that's localized or.
Do you have any sense, did they come back to the town if they didn't find so we would have to chase them down and say like, do you know something that we want to know?
It's all at the health department level, yeah.
Yeah,
This is an issue that concerns me that we're going to need to lick, which is the fragmentation of the water quality testing data. Health department's got some, we've got some, homeowners have got some. It's very difficult, given that fragmentation, it's very difficult to actually get the data either on a time series basis or on a consistent basis that you can actually make a decision on it, because it's kind of all over the place. And it's actually something that I want to go see Jason Hein about. Is there a way that we can actually get access to some of the water quality testing that they're doing on their own initiative and at their own cost? Because it would be useful for us.
We have access to it on a street level. Not address by address, but street level data. All of the Suffolk County Health Department tests are available at a street only level.
And
And the recent test in Silver Beach was only last month or the month before, so that was above 10 on PFAS. So it's probably not in the presentation.
Meg,
Yeah,
thank you, Peter. Meg.
there are a couple glitches in, like, the reason why the numbers for Jason were so low when he came, it was only, 300 and something tests or 400 tests in a decade, is because they're only counting the tests they run themselves, right? So it's only if they come out and test the water, do they have that data. Now, the Office of Wastewater Management, and I mentioned this to Jason, always has to get well test data whenever a sanitary system is installed. So they have their own bank of water test data, but it's not getting shared because these guys didn't run the lab results. Might be done at a commercial lab, whatever. If something gets flagged in wastewater, they kick it to water and water follows up. But they're only seeing the ones that get flagged. They don't have the general data, right? So then we started our own you need to give us a well report if you put it in a new well, and that should come with the water test. So now we have water tests there that, Jason's not gonna have in his bank because he didn't take the test. So, it really is a matter of pulling it from all these different sources and consolidating it into one place. It's gonna be hard to depend on the Office of Water to have that data set for us, when I know the Office of Wastewater probably has 10 times the number of data points, but they're not keeping track of it the same way water is. They only keep track of its problem. Otherwise, it's like, great, get the file done. So it's gonna be a an issue of talking between the different departments and getting everybody to kind of communicate clearly with each other, I think.
Okay,
When the town, when someone has to submit it to the town because of a specific requirement, is that just going into a file at the moment, or have we started to try to like put it in a spreadsheet or anything, or not there yet, you know?
Joe has some of the data. Right now, I think the well reports are going into a file, but we can pull the file and put it into the data set. And now that we have the email link, it'll be easier to kind of put them in one place.
all right, let's go back to Montclair Colony, the Montclair Peninsula testing, because I know Howard wanted to make a comment.
Yes, thank you again.
Okay,
Again, it's Howard Johansson, the chair of the Conservation Advisory. First of all, it's not Montclair Peninsula, it's Penantic Peninsula. So let's get that straight.
okay,
Montclair
Well,
Colony.
there's just the tip.
Yeah, it's just a small little tip there. I get my water tested every year, and thank God so far it's good. I mean, I've had some other problems with it, but the quality is good. And I think we are quite an affluent society in this island. I think the individual testing, $100 should be by the home, not the town subsidizing the home. I mean, we have residences down in Montclair or in the Atlantic Peninsula. They charge $40,000 a month to rent. They could take a little small percentage of that to test their water. I don't think we should put a burden on the town to do that. We should be able to collect the data from them. But, you know, it's very important. Most people don't know what's involved. I mean, you fill out that form, you have to know when your well was put in, date of it, the depth of it, and most people don't even have that data unless you did it recently. So.
I can tell you that I sent in mine with almost none of that because I didn't have it, and they didn't care. They do care lot block and give us the best idea you have, but they're gonna come and test it.
Oh, yes, they're gonna come and test it, but it's helpful for the individual homeowner to find
If they
out
have it,
information.
yes.
Well, it should be there. We only have several well drillers on the island, except the old timers drilled their own, you know, so.
Yeah.
And the same with the waste systems on the island, you know, we used to have pipes going out to the bay. So we know what the status is on that. I think John Cronin did a study of what we had on that years ago. So I just want to bring up that point. I don't think the burden of getting a $100 test should be put on the town individual, since we are quite an affluent area. And we might have some people, and I think they could request it from the town. I mean, you fill up a car once a month, it's something, it's $100. So, thank you.
thank you, Howard. Okay, gotten through the agenda. Any other business?
I just have the one, and I raised it at last meeting, so I'll maybe raise it more formally. I think if we're saying that there's water conservation and we're creating an irrigation pamphlet and we're doing all of that, that it's time to have some level of enforcement on irrigation to start this summer, coincident with all the same things that we're talking about. The town can decide how many days, how many, you know, what resources, but I would like to make a motion that we recommend that the town begin some level of enforcement this summer, coinciding with the warnings we're putting out, and then let it be an exercise in educating themselves about how pervasive it is or how pervasive it isn't. And, you know, they can decide where to start or where not. Clearly, nearshore areas are the most vulnerable, and you can have an inspector spend a couple of days walking the main roads in nearshore areas and write down addresses. So from my perspective, I feel like it's our responsibility to encourage them to have an open discussion about actually choosing to devote the resources rather than say, we just don't have the resources. So that motion is on the table if anyone wishes to second it.
How do you enforce it?
So let me ask you, be a little bit more crisp.
So for example,
Your ordinance or your motion is To initiate it
To initiate an
Discussion.
enforcement program
okay,
that we are recommending and requesting that the town devote specific resources this summer to begin some level of enforcement of the irrigation regulation. At a minimum, for example, there are rules that you cannot have more than X amount of drip hose
right,
in near shore areas. You walk up and down and there's brown hose sticking out of everywhere, in many, many houses. And I take it for granted because I had it in mine a number of years ago that was installed and I never used it after the initial planting and I never got a permit because they just didn't know any better. Some of these people may not use it. It's just still in the system. I was told I had to dismantle mine because I had an inspector come on the property and I ripped out and I was surprised that I had thousands of feet, because they're wrapping it around new plantings. And I wasn't there when they did it. I had no idea, but I hadn't been using it. But I can tell you, I walked down a block with my dog and there is ones that are so clearly visible and there's a connection with a hose right there that clearly the guy comes and turns it on and puts a timer on for 30 minutes. You can see it right there from the street. So, I think it's time to do something. I think the idea that we just don't have resources, but we have regulations, but we're yelling into the wind about conservation and what have you, it's just totally inconsistent, kind of the way our approach is. And so they can decide the level, the amount, the degree of enforcement, whether they issue warnings in this follow-up, but they don't issue fines. So, that's their kind of thing to do. But I would like to see the town, and I personally would like to see them have an open discussion at a town board meeting and see who says, nope, I'm not going to touch it. Because, that would be shocking to me, regardless of resources, that we're not willing to devote 2 days, say, in 6 weeks of the summer to somebody, starting to ping people and say, this isn't, you can't keep doing this.
okay, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I've already commented a lot about how the difficulties of enforcement are pernicious in this town.
Well, what he's asking,
What-
he's challenging the town board to enforce their own rule. He's letting the town board decide what that level of enforcement is. You're not saying write tickets, you're not saying levy fines, you're just saying, come back, you're
something.
saying, come back to us with an enforcement plan.
Yeah, well, technically it'd be nice if it were transparent and say, this is what we decided to do and we did it for 6 weeks and this is what we came to. That's for them, to do. But I think from my perspective, our obligation is to say, we're saying this, and there's this black hole and you're not addressing it at all. I think it behooves us to have a responsibility to point that out to them, and then what they do with it is, up to them.
So I also feel that I think that Sean is trying to make a modest proposal that we recommend that the town have some level of enforcement of its irrigation restrictions. My only concern, the only reason I haven't jumped to second that, I actually agree with what Sean is saying, but my only hesitation has been that not all of the restrictions that the town has on the books at this point feel rational to me, feel that so I would like to see the irrigation committee continue to meet, to continue to have that discussion. I do feel like that this is something, again, Andrew had a call for, is there new business? So we don't have to necessarily decide this right now. I think I would vote for and second such a motion, but I think it needs a little more precision. I do think that something like drip hoses would be, having somebody just walking around in nearshore areas and knocking on doors and reminding people about drip hoses should be removed after new plantings have been established.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. But I think that just saying to the town board, You should have some level of enforcement, figure out what level of enforcement you want it to be. I think we need to be more precise about what we would like to see enforced or to recommend that the board enforce at this time. And I think that should happen.
My recommendation is
Summer.
specific to installed drip hoses that are illegal.
Yeah, for example, if you had started there, I would have jumped up and said second.
Yeah.
I think that, drip hoses, not, I don't even.
That's the only thing to easily enforce. And I think that is an easy place to start because it's mostly by eye. And quite honestly, if you walk along the street and you're like, I think this guy has it, you stick your finger in from the street and you go like this, there it is. It's not brain surgery.
Would you like to revise your motion to
Yes.
see if you can attract a second?
Sure. Keep trying. We'll keep trying. I would like to make a motion to encourage and request the town board to begin an enforcement program related to drip line irrigation.
In the nearshore area.
In the near.
In the near shore area is fine.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Okay, Peter's the second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
I'll draw something up. It'll be maybe only 3 sentences. It's simple. It just passes the baton and says, we really encourage you and you guys, I would encourage you to have an open discussion and put it on the agenda so that it's transparent whether you're choosing to actually say, we just can't in any way, shape, or form. And anybody who does support it say, why can't we do 1 day? Why can't we do 2 day? Whatever that is.
But Sean, you got the motion.
Yep. All right.
Got the motion.
Take your victory.
Right, and it's 4.
Building department does enforce it when they find it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
if there's.
So I'll insert the
reason
word
on property and
proactive.
they see it, they do enforce
Okay.
it. So there is some enforcement.
Any other business? Any other business from the public? Can I have a motion to adjourn? That one. We got a motion. All right.
Second.
You're a tough one.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
History.
Very nice meeting
Okay.
you.
I have a history in that.